Hello, I am Dolmo and I make levels and mods, and today I am going to show you a mod I created for Fallout 4 called the King George III Public House, and it's a pub and it can be found in Concord. So I initially made this in October of 2018 and I've just spent the weekend tidying it up and I have released it on Bethesda.net. So I will post a link down in the description so you can download it yourself. But what this video is it's just going to be me talking about some of my design choices, both environmental and gameplay design choices. So first off, what I did was I got a door and I stuck it to a random building in Concord. We're just on the road in from the Red Rocket that you reach near the start of the game. And I basically just put a door in and that basically connects the level, and the exterior doesn't quite match up to the interior, but I don't think that matters and I don't think many people will notice, well, except all of you watching, but it's kind of one of these things you don't really think about, so that's what I've done. So we'll go inside and I'll begin talking about the level that I made. So here we are. The King George III Public House. I'll talk a bit more about the name later on, but I want to speak about the priorities I had with designing this main area. And obviously I'm thinking both about the environment and the gameplay. So my main priority was to make it coherent to look at, whilst also not being completely symmetrical. So obviously there's areas where it may seem symmetrical, so we've got like the very centre of the room here, which you can see from this pillar up in the balcony, it kind of splits the room in two. But on this side, we just have a clear overhang. Whilst if we look over on this side, we see it goes into this kind of wall that's kind of jutting out. And there's actually a door up there, which I'll speak a bit about when we get there, basically. But that was my first priority. My second priority was to add in verticality to make multiple levels, basically. So obviously we've got the balcony, which I've spoken about, and that's the obvious point of verticality, but we've also got this kind of raised platform going up to the bar, and it basically just helps the room feel less flat, basically, obviously, and it just helps build the room out. And I've done this in other ways as well, like putting these dividers here, these wooden dividers here. Instead of it being very open, they're put in the way, so you're kind of making the player have to move about, move around here. It just fills up the world space, and I quite like that. So they were kind of my two priorities. So there's 3 levels. Wait till I turn the radio off. There's 3 levels to this public house, or inn, because on the bottom floor we've obviously got the main bar. On the second floor, or the first floor, depending if you count this as the ground floor, we've got guest rooms, which I'll go up there in a minute and show you. And we've also got a cellar, which we'll probably touch on last. I added in these rad roaches because, I initially wasn't going to add anything in, but I thought it'd be nice to kind of add in a little bit of danger. And because it's a location that's placed near the start of the game, I didn't want it to be like super difficult, so I added in something that fits in very well with the start of Fallout 4, which are rad roaches. I think they were the first enemy you encounter, I think, if I remember correctly. And this mod kind of acts as a place where you can stock up and get a head start before going on your Fallout 4 adventure. It's got a ton of useful items, but there's not anything big. There's not anything, there's no like good weapons in this area. It's just kind of useful stuff. I didn't add in any quests or story. I did, the only bit of storytelling I did was in this terminal where it's got kind of these guest logs. It's as if the landlord has been keeping track of who's been staying there. So I've written a few of these, and again, there's no story to go along with them. Some of them are quite peculiar. But it's just something to help build up the world, and obviously if I had more writing ability, I think I would probably write more, and it's something I'm looking to improve in the future. Anyway, we'll now go and look at what I think is supposed to be the landlord's quarters, I think. And this is just kind of a generic room, but I'm always focusing on designing them to make them interesting. So we've got like the wear and tear, and doing this wear and tear and all of the damage in the areas is very, very, very easy in Fallout 4. Basically, it's just one block or one piece that I've put in, and then you can switch out different damage types basically. So you can make this bit of damage smaller, bigger. They're all pre-designed, but if you use them in different ways, they can be used to look very different. And I'll show you some examples of that later. Obviously, in this main room alone, I've done a lot to design the walls, the ceiling, and the floor. So in terms of floor, we've got like these, this bit here that's been broken up. I'll talk more about one over there in a minute, and the main hole in the ceiling with the vents coming through. And it just builds out the world and the environment. So if I didn't have these, people would think it would feel very plain, like they'd notice something. But because they're there, people tend not to notice. It's very subconscious. They'll like see it, but they won't acknowledge it and be like, oh look, vents. They'll just take it for granted. But that's what you want. You want to be changing your levels from the player going into a place that you have designed into a place that's very real in the context of the game you're making a level for. So obviously this is, I try to make this as real as possible within the context of Fallout 4. So, nice little skeleton looking down for the keen-eyed players. And this is just something interesting. It doesn't add very much, it's just something weird, which I know is something people like in, the Fallout games. So we'll go up the stairs now. There's a staircase just at the side here. And up here, what I've done is I've placed a barrier. Yeah, sorry, just wanted to get rid of the radroach. Anyway, I've placed a barrier here, so the player will subconsciously not go that way. And it's something I've done in a lot of other levels I've made. I can basically place something as simple as a barrel or this barrier, and when the player comes through that door, they can see that you can go that way. I could just, bump these two barriers out the way and go over that way. But there's also the door here, which I probably could have done better, making it a bit more obvious, or more bright, basically. But this loops round, so our goal is to make it round to that door there. So with the barrier that was previously there, they would go this way, and I'm always trying to make the player face in the same direction, so they're always trying to face north, more or less. Obviously, there has to be a few direction changes, obviously, to kind of get there, but overall they're always moving in the same direction, and I'll come back to talk about that. So this room's kind of just a bit of creepy, world building. I don't know what this room was supposed to be, but if I built on the story, I'd probably put some holotapes here that had, maybe the people staying in this room were capturing people or doing a lot of chems or whatever, I don't know. But here, this is the loop that I was talking about. So you can go around here, and I'll just take up this radroach. There we go. And even though there is kind of a slight change in direction, you're always facing kind of this way. Kind of north is the main direction you're facing. And we come into this room. This is the second guest room, and it is the biggest for some reason. Again, I'm trying to create detailed ceilings, which again, as I say, it's easy to do with Fallout 4. So this is the concept of you're constantly facing in the same direction. So this door opens this way specifically. I mean, I could have had it also open out this way as well, so if it was attached to the other side. But basically, it doesn't block this bit here. So you can always see, when you open the door, you can see where you're going to and you're facing in the same direction. So if I just jumped across there, I'd be facing the same way. I come out here, I can see I can go that way. I know where I am, it's pretty obvious, it's not that big a map. And it just kind of guides the player around and helps with consistency. A bit more detail here too. And again, these are things that the player doesn't notice. They just take it for granted, but if they weren't there, the player would notice that it'd be very bare and very plain, so they do help. Okay, we're now going into the kind of the cleanest guest room. And initially, back in October when I started this, I was wanting to have an NPC called King George, and he was supposed to be kind of this crazy guy who was kind of taking on the persona of King George III, and obviously that's what the pub is called. And the reason I called it that is King George III was the king of Great Britain during the American War of Independence, which is, referenced an awful lot in Fallout 4. Obviously we're in Concord, it has a huge significance with that, and King George III had a lot to do with that. That's about as much as I know. I'm not very good at history, but that's just in case you were wondering, that's why I called it King George III Public House. And as I said, I was going to have a character here, but as this mod was supposed to be just an exercise in environment design and kind of working more on using the creation kit. So that's why there's things like this lying around, because there was originally going to be an NPC here, but not anymore.
Nice.
And there's some loot to be found. Obviously you want to place good items at the end of your dungeon, and because I wasn't placing like a special weapon or anything like that, I thought placing these safes would be good, and I deliberately made this one advanced because it helps it kind of rewards the players who have already leveled up their lockpicking, which I quite like the idea of that. So we'll now come back out, and I did create a way down, an easy drop, although the player can just jump over the barrier. I did create just an easy way where you can just walk and you'll just drop down, just to kind of make it a bit easier. Alright, so there's one more area that I have designed, and that is the basement. So what I've done is I have actually placed a red light in this doorway and also down here, because they kind of match up. So if the player's walking this way, they'll kind of join the two together in their mind, and it kind of just helps them understand that that door leads down there, because obviously you can't tell that just by looking at the door. And if there was no light, the player might not see it, or they might see it but forget about it. So that's why I've put a very distinctive colour there. It's something that you can do in your levels. Lights are kind of one of the primary ways you can guide the player. It's not the only way. It's definitely not the only way, but it's something that is kind of an easy way of guiding the player through your level. And then we've got a change of theme, and we go down into the basement / kitchen. It's not the highest, pub in quality. So the kitchen's down here in the basement. There's a lot to find, a lot of food to kind of help the player on their journey in Fallout 4, whatnot. And if you go around the corner, if you look under the stairs, you can actually see that there is a safe. So if we go around the corner, we can walk towards the safe, but we get pounced upon by a pesky mole rat, who I put there again just as a point of interest. It wasn't supposed to be like a a jump scare or anything. It was just to kind of make the player think on their feet, oh, we've got to get rid of the mole rat, and then that kind of makes the reward of getting the safe a bit better. And this one's novice, so I think novice is default. So once you start
Yes.
the game, you can, anyone can unlock novice safes, I think. So that's why I made it different from the one upstairs. The one upstairs can only be done if you've leveled up your lockpick skill once. But this can be done by anyone. Just to make it a bit more fair. And obviously you can come back to this location at any time and get the other safe if you've leveled up your lockpick skill. But that is my Fallout 4 mod, the King George III public house. As I say, it was to help me get better with the creation kit. I do hope to make more with the creation kit in the future, and you can download the King George III public house on Bethesda.net. As I said, there is a link down in the description. Thank you for watching.